On the way out Sunday morning, Grayson called me. And Grayson said, you know, I am so glad that we took up that offering to help these families. He said, I know the family of the woman that jumped out of the second-story building and broke her back. Then I found out later that there were other people in the congregation that also knew that same family. But I've not found anyone who knows anyone else in our congregation. Now let's understand, all of these families lost everything materially that was in those apartments with them. I don't know if they had renter's insurance. There's a good chance that they did. So they all lost everything. But there's one family that lost more than the rest. And that is the family of the woman who had to jump off the second-story building and broke her back. Because she is the one that was critically injured when no one else was. We did not write a check to anybody this week because I told y'all what we were going to do, and we could not do it. Not in good faith. So what I'm going to ask your permission to do is to ask our treasurer to write the check this week, all $1,300 and some odd dollars of it, to the family of the woman who had to jump from the second-story window and broke her back. So instead of helping, to some extent, all of the families, I'm going to ask y'all if it's okay for us to help one of the families. Does anyone object to that? If that is okay with y'all as a good way to use the money that we took, and in keeping with the manner in which it was taken and the manner in which it was given, do you feel helping that one family instead of all of them is appropriate? If you do, say yes. Yes. If you don't, please say no. Because we want to use the money the way it was intended to be used. And this is the only way I know to do this is to ask that question. All right, so this week we will have Judy and the treasurer write the check to this one particular family. We've gotten the information from Grayson. We know where they live, where they're staying, and I will personally take the check to them this week as a gift from you, Trinity Baptist Church. All right? This morning, as I was getting ready for this morning, did a lot of prayer, and then in my preparation, as I said to you this morning, I recognized that it wasn't the most passionate sermon that you have ever heard me preach. As a matter of fact, being completely honest with you, going into the message, I felt like, at best, I was preaching you, though I always try to do my best, I felt at best I was giving you something that was mediocre. Was I surprised? Obviously, I touched a real nerve this morning because on the way out the door, I had more people talking to me about what I had preached than I can remember in recent times, both from a positive standpoint and from a questioning standpoint about the sermon in general. So I want to continue it a little bit tonight before we go into our church conference. If we think about the Old Testament, the two most famous prophets in the Old Testament are Elijah and Elisha, and neither were married. The three leading figures in the New Testament, John the Baptist, Jesus, and Paul. John the Baptist was never married. Jesus was never married. And then there is Now, we can argue that there are other people in the New Testament that hold a high ground, such as Peter, and we know that Peter was married because in Jesus' ministry, one of his first miracles was to heal Peter's mother-in-law. But we do know that Elijah, Elisha, Jesus, and John were never married. The question is, what about Paul? Because what we know historically speaking is that though it was not a requirement for a rabbi to be married, because Jesus is not married, and he is called rabbi by his disciples, it was indeed very, very odd. It was out of the norm for a rabbi not to be married. So it is much more likely that Paul was married than not. The question is, what do we gather from the New Testament? What is it that the New Testament actually tells us about Paul? How does Paul look at marriage, and how does Paul look at singleness? That's what I want us to look at tonight for just a little while. First of all, let's look at Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, then we're going to turn back to chapter 7. Hopefully none of this will be extremely long, but I do need to give you the context for each of these passages because they each have a particular context. 1 Corinthians chapter 9. What Paul is arguing for. Paul is arguing for the fact that he and Barnabas deserve the right, or he and Silas deserve the right to be supported materially by the churches. But they weren't. Look at this passage, beginning in chapter 1, verse 9 of 1 Corinthians. Am I not free? Am I not an apostle? Have I not seen Jesus our Lord? Are not you my workmanship in the Lord? If to others I am not an apostle, at least I am an apostle to you. For you are the seal of the apostleship, of my apostleship in the Lord. This is my defense to those who would examine me. Do we not have the right to eat and drink? Do we not have the right to take along a believing wife, as do the other apostles and the brothers of the Lord and Cephas? Or is it only Barnabas and I, who have no right to refrain from working for a living, who serves as a soldier at his own expense, who plants a vineyard without eating of any of its fruit, or who tends a flock without getting some of the milk? Now, as I said, the argument that he is writing about is the fact that he and Barnabas deserve material support from the churches. And so in his writing about this, what he tells us is that the Lord's brothers are married, that the apostles of the Lord are married, but evidently Paul and Barnabas are single, at least at the time that this is being written. And because of their singleness, they are having to work to support themselves, whereas all of the married men are gaining support from the churches. And Paul said this is not right. That's what he's arguing, that this whole situation is not right. Now we furthermore know that Paul was not married at the time that he wrote 1 Corinthians from chapter 7. Would you go with me there? 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And here he is giving the basic principles for marriage. We're only going to look at a little bit of this. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 6, 7, and 8, and then we're going to skip down to verse 25. Now, as a concession, not a command, I say this. I wish that all were as I myself am, that each one has his own gift from God, one of one kind and one of another. To the married and the widows, I say that it is good for them to remain single as I am. Now, interestingly enough, the word usage is different. So in verse number 7, he is talking not necessarily about his singleness, but if you go up to what he's written before, he's talking about being able to control his passions. That's what he's talking about in verse number 7. But in verse number 8, he is very specific to the married and the widows. I say that it is good that they remain single as I am. Now this brings up a question. Was Paul, we know at this time he's single. That's obvious. Was he single having never been married? Or was he single because he was widowed? Which is a possibility. And the truth of the matter is, we don't know. There's no way to prove either case from the Scripture. But look with me real quickly in verse 25 and following. Now concerning the betrothal, I have no command from the Lord, but I give my judgment as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. I think that in view of the present distress, it is good for a person to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be free. Are you free from a wife? Do not seek a wife. But if you do marry, you have not sinned, and if a betrothed woman marries, she has not sinned. Yet those who marry will have worldly troubles, and I would spare you of that. Go to verse 32. I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife. And his interests are divided. Now, obviously, Paul is not saying that a married man is not concerned with the things of the Lord. That's obvious not what he's saying. But what he is saying, as he continues, is exactly what I said this morning. When a man and woman marry, there is a responsibility that they have to one another that involves a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of resources that a single individual is not involved with. It's as simple as that. It is exactly what Paul said. Therefore, a single individual can be as surely used by God and has been. Elijah, Elisha, John the Baptist, Jesus, now Paul. Some of the most famous individuals in all of the Scripture. All of them single who have been greatly used by God as surely as married couples have been used by God. Therefore, it is completely erroneous and wrong for us to look at unmarried individuals as if they were somehow not complete, whether they be widowed or whether they just be single. That was the whole argument of what I was trying to get across this morning. And when we got home, my wife and I were talking more about it. Listen, and I can be as bad about this as any of the rest of y'all can. But how many individuals that are our kids or grow up in church, they're in their 20s now, and what is it that we naturally do? As soon as we see them, who are you dating? One of the individuals I had coming out of the door this morning, who is a single individual, single man, said to me, I'm so thankful for what you preached this morning. He said, you do not know what I go through from my parents, the people around me, and even my own friends who are constantly badgering me about dating as if because I'm not dating, therefore there must be something wrong with me. Now that may not be your intentions, and I will promise you it is surely not mine. But when the shoe's on the the other foot, they hear it long enough, and that the way they honestly feel is that what we're saying to them is, if you're not in this particular state, married or looking to, something must be wrong with you. When Paul himself says, listen, I want to give y'all some advice. And what married couple, that, as blessed as we are as married couples, as blessed as I am as a married man, what is it that Paul says? If you read on down, he says, listen. He said, here's the facts. When you get married, there's all kinds of emotions, there's all kinds of stuff that you deal with as a married couple that single individuals don't deal with. And I'm just trying to save people from that. Now, obviously, I hope that we're going to establish Paul was not against marriage. Jesus was not against marriage. We never find John the Baptist being against marriage. Elisha and Elisha never say anything that gives a hint that they are against marriage. It's not an either or. It is a both and. And could it just be that that person that we're badgering about whether or not that they are looking to be married actually has the gift of singleness, and Paul does call it a gift. The gift of singleness, where they single-mindedly want to spend their life in service to God without the encumbrance of any other relationship that we would call marriage. And yet, because of our badgering, we make them feel like that the gift is actually a curse. Now, from Ephesians 5, I want you to turn there real quickly. Ephesians chapter 5. I want to show you that Paul is definitely not against marriage. Because the same man who just wrote, I'd like you to stay like me, because then you wouldn't have all these anxieties and you wouldn't have all these different things pulling at you, also wrote this. I'll just read what it says about husbands. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of the water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as Christ loved the church. Obviously, Paul believes marriage is an actual symbol of Christ's love for his church. Paul has the highest view of marriage possible for a Christian man to have. And yet he's single because he had that gift. And he said that there are times that gift is very important. Could you have imagined, evidently happened, that the other apostles carried their wives with them on their missionary journeys? But the only recorded missionary journeys we have are really important. His first missionary journey, his second missionary journey, his third missionary journey. Evidently, he was able to go and do things and go to places and do things that others were not able to do. Or at least they're not written about for us. The point is, as the old preachers used to say, the ground is level at the cross. Whether you're married, whether you're single, whether you're widowed, whether you're divorced, it is level at the cross. And so that's where we are. And as much as we like the fact that we love to see people, young people, in love, and dating, and getting ready to get married, and we're all excited about that, up settling for something less than what God has. All because good Christian people couldn't keep their mouth shut. That was the gist of this moment. And if Jesus was single, and John was single, and Paul was single, and Elijah was single, and Elisha was single, I'm here to tell you, there's nothing wrong with singleness. And to imply otherwise is outside the scope of Scripture. Simple thing. Simple thing. Let's pray. Father, we come to you tonight and